Hello again, Steve here with a few comments to continue this tradition of coffee chatting. Oh, what a beautiful day it is today. It's cloudy and all, but it's just, there's no rain, no wind. It's mild, though I do have my hat on. A little bit chilly, but it's just a quiet country road I went on a little drive with here. I'll show you. There's the road down there. See a peak of a mountain coming through the clouds there. It's a cloud lower and cloud above the mountain. Today I wanted to talk about something, I'll continue along the lines of that theme I've been going on in the last couple of days, which is kind of, taking care of ourselves and looking out for ourselves, because there's a lot of energy put towards obviously wanting to control us. I mean, if people can control us, they can get something out of us, right? And we'll talk about this concept of lying and the benefit of lying. There is, we don't like to be lied to, although it's used all the time. It's used in politics, religion, banking systems. That's their mainstay, basically, is lying. And I would say anyway. And of course, in sales and in other forms of deception. In fact, there was a guy who introduced me to this book a while back, which I didn't read all of it. I read little bits of it. I think it was called the 49 Laws of Power. And basically, this guy, the story is approximately along the lines of this guy who had worked in Hollywood, and he wrote this book to sort of spell out that in spite of what people talk about in how they do things, the way they do things in reality is usually by deceptive means. And the whole book is basically 49 ways to deceive people, as far as I can see it. And this is and I think that there's a benefit to it for the way we have evolved. The way we have evolved has been through a tribal system, and in order to have conformity within a tribe, you must be able to convince people that some people are better than others, or some people are more honorable in terms of honorable than others, and therefore just because they say something, then it must be true. In fact, I just read an article, or it was called a homily, the Pope Francis's homily for the Christmas of this year. Somebody I know sent it to me, and she was quite impressed with it. And I read it, and there was basically nothing in it. It was all just begging the question, what are you actually talking about here? But because he's the Pope, and because to some people he actually is infallible, he's the actual spoken word of God, which once again has got no foundation in any reality, then they listen to him. And this is how we have evolved, as I see it anyways, is by having artificial superstructures that allow some people to have power and others to be their serfs or their underlings. Now, I talked a couple days ago about common sense, and I think this is something that we all have, because we all have senses after all. We all have sense of touch, smell, sight, these sorts of senses, taste. And we also have the sense about us to be able to emote, to be able to sense how it is other people are feeling. We all have this, but what we do is we're born like that, and that's how we experience the world, but we're taught common beliefs, and that they are somehow more reliable than our common sense. So we replace sense with beliefs. And beliefs, of course, are not necessarily based in anything other than somebody said so. Or you could call it kind of blind faith, like that. Whereas feelings are empirical. They're, we talk about reason and evidence. Well, reason is you think it through. It has a logical train to it, but evidence is the highest standing in our experience. If we can actually feel something, if we saw something, if we heard something, if we felt that somebody was angry, if it felt like that, then we cannot deny our common sense. And I think the benefit of lying, of telling people to rely on the common belief, what we believe, rather than your sense. The belief, or the benefit, is that it helped to control others. So to have large controlled societies, set societies, to be able to conquer another one, to be able to have an army to conquer another army, another area, and to spread a certain doctrine, you had to have lies. Lies had to be central to, it was the normal way of operating, rather than any sort of truisms. And the way it worked, as I see it, and how I've experienced it, is in very young ages, we are told scary stories, very scary stories. And then, of course, we're offered a solution to the scary story, which is the hierarchy, right? Like, for example, when I grew up, I was taught about hell and how awful that was. But the solution to it was this salvation. And, of course, the salvation always involved a whole bunch of people. Like, there was this guy who had a certain robe on. You go into that little pillbox and tell him what you did, and then it's all gone. So that's a form of salvation. It's a systematized form of salvation. But it's not based on common sense, right? It's based on a common belief. Another form of terror that I was taught was nuclear annihilation. I was taught about this even in schools. We learned how to go underneath a table because there was a thermonuclear apocalypse that could happen any moment. And this was extremely scary, to the point where I basically, at a certain point in the 70s, resigned myself to being just basically burned in an apocalyptic nuclear holocaust, and of course to go from that flame of fire directly basically into hell, because I realized there was no way that I could keep up with the dictates of the saviors to save myself. There was never enough saving going on for me, so it was really my experience of it has really been that this form of lying actually works, because it worked for me for a very, very long time, and to a great extent it still does, because there's still a lot to be worked through. So what is the benefit of lying for the evolution of our species as humanity? Well, I would say that it's helped to control the masses so that certain people could get what they want and others couldn't. Is it necessary, though? I don't think so. I think we certainly do get along very often without lying, and I would say that when we do, our quality of life is that much better. Surely there will come a time when people will realize that doing the opposite of what we have been doing, we actually get more of what we really want. You see, so often we think by deceiving and lying to others, that we'll somehow get our goodies from them, and that's what we want. But in the end, though, what we get is lack of trust throughout. There's so much lack of trust. To me, that's worse than what we got. So if you really start to think about it, about what it is that we want, even the material goods, if we can be honest with people, in the end we can get more of that, more of what we really want. Because the material goods, after all, we only want it for an underlying reason. We want it for, it's very often a case of trying to compensate for lack that we have in other areas of our lives, lack of feeling of importance and this sort of thing. Whereas if we're honest and we can look people straight in the eye and tell them honestly what our deal is, what it is that we're selling, and even if we're going to lose that sale, at least when we make a sale, or when we make a deal, or we make an agreement, or we make a friend, it's real, it's truthful, as much as it can be, as close as it can be. And to me anyways, that's real quality of life. It's not veneer quality of life, it's depth of quality of life, because we have that true connection, that real community, that common ground that we so yearn as human beings, I would say. So in the final analysis, what is the benefit of lying? I would say it has a veneer. It looks like it has a benefit, but it really doesn't. It's really derogatory in the end. It really destroys and tears apart relationships, and creates disunity. It creates separation, and that experience is, from my perspective, not something to be really desired. So I guess the key is to focus on our common sense, more or less, rather than our common beliefs. Or if we're gonna allow any legitimacy of the common beliefs, we have to surely question them. Say, well, what is the basis for this belief? Does it have any intrinsic merit to it? And if it doesn't, as hard as it might be, perhaps we're better off to just drop it, or else just use it as an example of a story, and glean what information we can from that, but give it no more merit than that. Anyways, it was great chatting again. Steve here. I'll sign off for now, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.